Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Hope everybody's having a great day. I have a special guest. I've got Mike Anderson with Easy DMARC. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing fantastic, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. It's a great day, and just living the dream, man.
I love that. Love it.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about a pretty important topic, right? Today's event is called Overcoming Google and Yahoo Rejection, and how DMARC gets messages through. The last thing that we want to do is have clients dealing with bounce backs. We're living in a day that we continue to leverage email as a marketing tool, and the ramifications of not properly setting it up are substantial. And when you're counting on email marketing as a way to help drive leads, you want it to work, right?
Yeah, I mean, and DMARC is that foundational part with DMARC going from optional to mandatory a few months back to be able to get your email into that holy grail, the inbox. You got to follow certain protocols that have
Yeah.
been mandated by the providers, and so yeah, it's pretty important now.
Yeah. So as we kind of kick things off here, let's. I want to have you give a little bit of background about you, who you are, and just real brief about Easy DMARC, and then we'll get into all of our content. So we have a lot of things to discuss today.
Yeah, so Mike Anderson, I'm in charge of our global indirect business at Easy DMARC. And last year, my first year at Easy DMARC, I grew the business 10x in 1 year. And so
Wow.
we're having substantial growth again this year. It's hard to repeat 10x of 10x the second time
Right.
around, but we are having massive growth and expansion. I've got a team that works for me all over the world, acquiring MSP partners and resale partners, as well
Yeah.
as supporting them going to market.
That's great. So if you guys are experiencing some 10x growth from this, that means it's an opportunity for MSPs, right?
Absolutely huge, huge opportunity for MSPs. If you think about the DMARC market being mandatory now, compliance being mandatory, and there's only about 2%, 2 to 5% estimates of the market actually being covered with DMARC compliance, and you're talking 350 million plus domains. Do the math on the business potential that's out there, Dan.
Yeah. So why is this happening? I mean, it might seem obvious, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, or what you think you understand, and it doesn't mean you're not wrong, but or it doesn't mean you're not right, but there are solid reasons why this is occurring. Can you give those breakdowns?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. DMARC has been a protocol to prevent spoofing for a long time. The protocol has been around over a dozen years, but it was not widely adopted. And so, everybody knows that business email abuse, fraud, spamming, spoofing, phishing, all of that really originates from email most of the time, over 97%. And so the email service providers, the first party providers and the third party providers all figured out that unless they were going to make this protocol, this DMARC mandatory, the adoption rate was not going to really take off to a high degree. And so what we're seeing is massive adoption once they made that policy go from optional to mandatory. That was one reason to prevent that spoofing and fraud. It's been such a big problems, and all the third party and first party providers, they get the calls when it happens, even though it's really not their fault, right? That was one.
Yeah.
The second reason was, about 30 to 40% of a network's email service provider's network is overhead spam and fraud. And they figured out if they can reduce that, then they can sell that capacity instead of spending it on waste. So they have a financial incentive to do this also.
Okay. So if someone doesn't have DMARC properly set up, besides first and foremost email deliverability issues, what are some other ramifications?
Yeah, deliverability issues, are very important when you're talking about, invoicing, email marketing, just common messaging. That's important enough. But more importantly is somebody can spoof your domain and start sending messages that look like they're coming from your firm or your company
Yeah.
and carry a message that can be very damaging to the recipient, including fraud, theft, viruses, all kinds of just nasty results.
Okay. And as far as responsibility, is this the client's responsibility? Is it the MSP's responsibility? I think I know what that answer is, but I just wanted to ask you and just hear it from your perspective.
Well, if I'm a business owner, I'm going to try to manage my risk, right? And so
Yeah.
since I can't do it all myself, what do? I hire for competency, and part of that hiring process for competency is to get accounting and IT support and some other
Yeah.
functions. Well, within the MSP community, they're hiring you for your competency to keep them protected, to tell them what they don't know, and so if a business gets they get hit with fraud and some deliverability and business compromise issues.
Yeah.
The first place they're going to look to is the MSP. You're going to get that dreaded call you never want to get.
Yeah. And, we as MSPs, from day one, I mean, we've always said that, we're here to provide proactive technology support, not reactionary. And, we need to be ahead of the curve. We need to be, our clients, they think we have their back and we should have their back. And are you seeing out there, situations where someone's, maybe experiencing these issues and they're doing research and they find somebody online, even though they already have an MSP, and they're reaching out to a third party and, not thinking about, oh, maybe I should be reaching out to my MSP. And obviously there's some negative, implications to that.
Yeah, if you're an MSP, you never want another IT service provider to get a foothold in your customer's business, because we all know what can happen from there. Once they land on that, then they can start hopping around and taking market share from you and other categories from you. So this is in terms of a new service offering that needs to be integrated into your stack. This is really a non-negotiable.
Yeah. And, even though a lot of these, changes have already put in place, it doesn't mean that the opportunities are gone, right? I mean,
Yeah, the opportunity is massive. Like I mentioned before, less than 5% of the market is DMARC compliant. We just got off an analyst call just a very short while ago, and they just fed us some just amazing statistics. And I have to say, they're completely fired up about Easy DMARC. They look at us as the market leader, especially in the MSP space, for the service providers because of our overall program. But one of the things they said is the greenfield opportunity is just virtually untapped for us selling to the MSPs and to the MSPs selling to the end market. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of domains that are up for play.
Yeah.
In a global business, I mean, you can solve for DMARC, in Toledo, Ohio, over in, Paris, France, if you want. I mean, you can provide that service anywhere in the world.
Yeah. That's a great point. And so I want to go back to that 5% though. So so ultimately 95% of the people, are potentially experiencing issues. I mean, are they just living with these issues? I mean, why aren't there, why is it such a low number that's actually taking the proper action?
Well, part of it is, the requirements are just now getting out to the end user, right? A lot of businesses are head down, focused on, if I'm a manufacturing firm, I'm focused on manufacturing. I'm not focused on email compliance issues necessarily. As a secondary result, I hope my MSP or my IT group is looking at these oncoming threats. But most people are so head down, and the requirements going from optional to mandatory just a few short months ago. Most people never even got in line. But what we're seeing is a massive caravan to DMARC compliance, and so there's several categories. Only less than 5% are secured. but they broke the statistics down for us. So, there's a number of people that have a provider that are not really doing anything. And then most people don't have a policy, or they put in a policy of P equals none, which is no protection at all. So they're not even where the service providers want you to get to, which is P equals reject.
Yeah. I think the thing is, staying on top of it, with your client, it's a no-brainer. It has to happen. What are you seeing out there amongst MSPs? Are you seeing that they're just automatically providing this service to all their clients because it's the right thing to do, or are they adding it as an a la carte and it's just it's an optional type service?
Yeah, I'd say 99% are adding it in. And MSPs blend their price models a number of ways. We're all familiar with how you go to market, either an overall or line item or break fix. There's a number of combinations, but I really don't hear any single MSP, and I've personally sold and onboarded thousands of MSPs on our program in the past 20 months that say they're not monetizing it in some form or fashion. Again, about at least 99% are, either going to do a one-time service adjustment until they can renew the contract. And then at the end of the contract, they're going to adjust the price, or they come in and say, hey, this is a new protocol. It used to be optional. It's no longer optional. This is why we have to do it now to protect your domain reputation and sending scores and delivery.
Yeah.
So we got to get this done. If you want us to get it done, here's the components, the break fix, a consulting agreement, as well as that monthly monitoring.
So first and foremost, the step is to, address this for all of your managed clients, right? And then you can take a look at, clients that fall outside of that, whether it be break fix or more importantly, to be able to drive new business opportunity for foot in the door, start seeking out others.
Yeah, that's the good part about this. The winds are at our back, right? We didn't create this standard. This is not optional anymore, right? It used to be optional for so many years, so it was kind of nice to have. And if you really think about it, it was an additional layer of cybersecurity protection. That should have been job number one anyway. They should have done it just on general principle for that, but they haven't. But now when they figure out their emails aren't getting through, boy, it sure moves to the top of the stack of requirements very quickly with these end customers.
Yeah. And what are ways to do those assessments to be able to identify where there are problems?
Yeah, so part of our platform comes with what we call a domain scanner, and what it'll do is it'll scan the customer's domain and produce a risk assessment that is exportable to the customer, and it'll have multiple categories: red, yellow, green, and an overall scoring system with a description on the risk assessment, so that the MSP can really just plug in domains in their service area and look for those high risk potential clients, and then just export that report, mark it to the prospect, and we really give you all the tools to do that.
Are there certain marketing tools that that you have available to help drum up some of that business?
Yeah, the domain scanner, number one, and then we actually have a complete marketing and sales enablement program that comes with our package. So once you become a customer, you're going to get access to a large marketing portal that will help you sell the value of it. And, to be honest with you, Dan, if a company says, well, what is this DMARC? And they Google, do I need DMARC, which I just did the other day. I got 2.9 million results that say, for a fact, yes, you do need DMARC. You need to get it as soon as possible. So the MSP is going to have, a lot of headwind, in their sales to move this forward. It's not like they have to convince the customer because this is optional. It's no longer optional. So you got a lot of momentum to close these deals.
Yeah. And for our audience members out there, if you have questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'd love to answer any questions that you have. It's a great opportunity to get those addressed. That's what we're here for. There is a question I'm going to throw out there. Steve was asking, doesn't SPF and DKIM address your own email sending strength, where DMARC looks at other senders' strength by reviewing their SPF and DKIM during inbound? Can you
No,
address that?
it doesn't work like that at all. So the protocols SPF and DKIM, right? Sender policy framework, where I'm coming from and where I'm returning to, if those don't match up, then you say, what is the policy? Or the DKIM keys don't match up, which means the body of the email could potentially be changed and altered, right? If that doesn't match up, then the DMARC policy says, what do? I do nothing. That's a bad idea. Or I'll quarantine that email. That's a better idea. Or I will reject that email outright. That's the best idea. We just got notification from the analysts and some of our people and the analysts were speaking to Yahoo not too long ago. Yahoo is actually going to go to a policy mandate of P equals reject, because when you get to that reject policy, that's going to give you the highest level of protection, which is what they want. But now, since they are going to mandate that policy of P equals reject, is what we heard, that's going to give you the highest level of deliverability also.
So with the to do nothing, is there, I mean, other than, just having that option there, I mean, why is there any reason why somebody would choose that?
There's not a good reason, to be honest with you, to not do anything.
Yeah.
You're number one, it's just like, playing Russian roulette. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you, right? And when you look at all the global threats, all the scanning that's going on for open domains, just every single day they're finding a new exploit. They're finding someone to, all these open domains to start sending email. They're trying to rip off your customers and your employees, and interagency and inter-employee things. CEO to CFO, write this check. I just cashed a check for $100,000. Ripped off the company, or even worse, ripping off the customer, saying you owe us money, pay up, and the customer pays up, and it was all false. If you can tolerate that business risk, hey, be my guest. But most companies can't, and the statistics will show you when that happens. So many companies never recover, and so my advice would be just get it done. It's not going to cost you that much if you use one of our service providers. If you're an end user of the business, get it done. You're going to reduce your risk and up your deliverability. Nothing but good things in store.
Yeah. And, then there's the quarantine and reject. I mean, I apologize if you just didn't address this. Is there a reason to have it be a progressive, movement from quarantine to go into reject, or do you move immediately to reject, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's been some debate recently about going straight from nothing to reject. But, this is a process, so you have to have all of your sending sources aligned completely before you move your policy from nothing to, over quarantine to reject. Typically, it's going to be a process from nothing to quarantine to reject, so that you can have a little, leeway in there if you left out a source and you don't want to immediately start rejecting it. But if you've done your homework and you've done this correctly over a couple month period, you've monitored it and you've got all your sources aligned correctly, and you're confident in that, you can go from none to reject. Most of the time, though, it's going to go from nothing to quarantine. Make sure you caught everything, so that if a legitimate source is not configured correctly and it just started sending maybe a company newsletter once a quarter, it wasn't the first 2 months. You want to do things like that to mitigate a little bit of the sending risk. But at the end of the day, if it's not configured correctly, it's going into spam anyway.
Right.
So it's not like most people are going to see it, but you can reduce your risk a little bit by creating what we call a DMARC journey, going from nothing to quarantine to reject in a linear fashion.
So I saw interesting. There was a comment on Reddit the other day that someone was asking, when it comes to DMARC, is this only related to inbound, or is it outbound, or is it both? And I thought that was an interesting question. You elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so it does affect both. The DMARC policy is directly related to outbound domain protection, right? So that you're going to be protected. However, there is a caveat. When your email is coming across that network, it's going to leave from your network and hop on a new network to get to the end provider. And in that case, it might be Google, Yahoo, AOL, Microsoft, Apple. And they
Yeah.
look at that email and they say, okay, it is protected or it is not protected. And if it's not protected, then they're going to say, no, we're going to diminish the deliverability process.
Okay.
We perceive it as a threat. Now,
Yeah.
DMARC was invented for inbound protection per se, right? It was invented for outbound protection, but now the email service provider networks are reading emails that are coming in. And if they're not DMARC compliant, then they're diminishing their deliverability because they're not, adhering to the new standards.
Gotcha. And there is another question that came in. Carlos is asking how or does this impact Google Workspace and Office 365 mail services?
All the email service providers now have pretty much mandated it. So it does impact anybody using Microsoft email or Google email.
Gotcha. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, you need to put this in place, regardless.
Yeah, the old days of, oh, we're just going to wait and see. As an MSP, you're really costing yourself some market share because right now it is literally a land grab to get all the domains that you can underneath your DMARC management, because you know how it is. Once you capture somebody, if you're doing a good job, it's hard to take business from somebody else, right? And now, as an IT operator, the last thing you want to do is let some other MSP get a foothold in your business.
Is there any reason why you want to, if you're just going to add this into your stack and, it's not like you're going to, have an increase because, if we're doing things right, we have enough margin in available so that we can add in new tool sets because, although cliche, what worked yesterday isn't necessarily what's going to work today and tomorrow. And so we have to continually to stay on top of things and be ahead of the curve. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to just across the board implement this right away? Or does there need to be some kind of customer involvement as part of the process?
Well, we hear the methodology go both ways. A lot of high value MSPs, they're like, we set the standard for the customer, and the customer, if they're going to be on our platform and under our protection, they have to meet the standard. Other MSPs, have different. They just line item and chop up everything, and may not have that margin or that flexibility or that strength of service to do that with customers. And so, you have the flexibility to do it both ways, but you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to enter the market with your customers, right? So if your customers are under that yearly agreement, maybe you do what's called a one-time service adjustment and you go, hey, this is a new protocol. We have to implement it. There's going to be a one-time service adjustment of $300, right? So you just put $300 to the bottom line. You have 100 customers, you just put $30,000 to the bottom line in 1 month. And then if you get these agreements, you can bump them, in a profitable manner.
I love that approach. And, because there are there are obviously various approaches that you can take with that. I do want to jump over to like a slightly different topic when it comes to reporting and analyzing. So if you're using a tool like EasyDMARC, it's more than you just making changes to DNS records, right? I mean, there is a platform available that you guys have available that allows you to get insights to be able to see what's actually happened. What does that look like, and what does that involve, and what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, the reporting platform is going to give you, day-to-day visibility, on the trending, right? Especially for the first 3 to 6 months, you want to make sure everything is compliant, get it all moved over to compliant before you start moving policy, right? But the benefit of reporting is that you'll always have that visibility on, number one, where there's threats coming. You're going to see spoofing attempts against your customers' domains. So you're probably providing firewall services. So you're going to want to copy that IP, blacklist it in your firewall, right, to make sure that they can't get through any other ways. And then sources change from time to time, not very often, but they do. And when that happens and you're not monitoring it, your email will start failing if you have your compliance set to reject, right? Last thing you want to do is start rejecting, a company's invoicing or their email marketing. And the same happens when a company adds new sources, right? And fails to tell the MSP. For your MSP listeners, how many times has a customer added something in their environment and didn't tell you. And then all of a sudden things aren't working. You're like, what's going on? And then without reporting, you don't know. With our platform, you're going to see, oh, that, Ace Hardware added, MailChimp to do their mail marketing, but they didn't tell you. You can call them up and go, hey, Ace, did you add MailChimp? Oh, yeah. Dan forgot to tell you that. Oh, no problem. See it. We'll get it fixed. Send you a bill. Keep moving. Right. Rather than go 3 months down the road and go, why is our email marketing all failing? Right? And, oh, this something about DMARC is blocking it. Hey, Dan, why didn't you notify us? Right. So if you're not monitoring, you don't see these type of, down the road threats. You're reactive, like you said, instead of, you're reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah. How about, like integrations into PSA? Is this something that you would want those reports to come into, your ticketing system? Is the capability there? Are there any reasons why you wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, no, we absolutely have been standing up all kinds of PSA integrations. ConnectWise, Acronis, we're about to stand up a FactSafe Marketplace that has another dozen connections. We're standing up open APIs. IT Glues is being developed. Autotask Kaseya is being developed. And we know with MSPs, doing more with less creates that profitability margin, and automation is the key to that. So, pulling that data over into your PSA and RMM, a key strategy for us.
Is it going to create a lot of noise? Is there going to be things in there that, really, what I call a NAR, we've always called the NAR in our business, no action required. Is that going to happen?
You really have the ability to tune the alerts any way you want. Okay. So if it's, just a monitoring alert, you might want to shut those off. But if it's a critical alert, you might want to leave those on. Something starts failing, you need to know. Something changes, you may not need to know. But when you start seeing failures, you definitely need to know that. And so with our alerting system, you can really fine tune it across the board.
Okay. And just a reminder for our audience out there, if you do have questions, Mike is here and he is ready and willing to answer your questions. So, and just remember, there are no dumb questions. We are all in this together, and just ask away. And is there any best practice that you've seen, from an MSP that you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. I wasn't aware of that. And, that you found that you would like to share?
I was really surprised. We've had a number of MSPs lately, or IT operators, service providers, whatever you want to call them, that may be a little bit more specialized, that actually break the monetization strategy up into 3 parts. The first part being the assessment. Well, if you just want us to look at it, we've got to write an assessment strategy, sign this work order, we'll get it done. They pay for the assessment. Okay, we're going to deliver your assessment. That's like a domain scan of all your domains. Okay, here's what we found. This needs to be fixed. Here's your next work order for the actual repair and recalibration of the sources. And then if you want us to monitor it ongoing, here's what it's going to cost on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Having inventive ideas like that, really, can enhance your ability to make some additional revenue and profitability. What's the worst that's going to happen? You don't get all 3 pieces, but you get 2. You're still going to be pretty happy with the results.
Yeah. So, in when you do get those reports coming in, we're not talking about things that are so, highly complicated as far as resolving those issues, are we?
No, you're talking about, with our platform, having the documentation built in on how to resolve sources. We've got almost 1,600 sources documented in our platform, every big source that you can imagine, and a lot of them you've never even heard of. So really, once you use our platform and see how it works, we're going to give you the answers of most of these most of these configurations. And so when you think about it, adding a setting into DNS, what is that? About 5 to 10 minutes worth of work. You're done.
Right.
And if you sell, consulting or work order 1 hour per source, you can really start making some really good profit margins using our platform to create those efficiencies.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have another question that came in. And again, if you do have a question, please throw them in the chat. The question is, how does the solution work? Is it an all-in-one product that you apply to your mail servers?
It's not applied to your mail servers. This is outbound domain protection. So the settings go into DNS to protect your domain, but our platform is what we can consider. We actually call what we do a program, an MSP program, because it's not just the platform and the actual features, but it's overall sales, marketing, documentation, support, training, an overall program. But this is something that can really just dovetail into a cybersecurity practice. Like you said, it's not rocket science, and so
Yeah.
you can integrate this into your practice with relative ease.
Okay. Let's take a look at, from a cost perspective. I mean, if we are adding it into our stack, so it's not like we're, creating an additional cost, but if we have any kind of clients that might be break fix, if we have any, like I said, in the beginning, we could use this as opportunity to get foot in the door. What are you seeing MSPs charging their, clients for the service?
Yeah, so the good thing about the service, it's gonna allow you variable pricing and variable margins. We have an entry level price that's so low. If you're charging, 20, 30, $40 a domain per month, you're going to be making, substantial profit, right? And if you want to charge the consulting for the alignment process, you're going to make substantial profit there too, right? And we're hearing traditional consulting rates, whatever it is, 100, 125, 150, whatever your traditional consulting rates are, you're still going to get this for this type of service. And we all know how this is, right? Part of being an MSP and an IT operator is you got to have you play multiple roles, and one's going to be, the chief of sales. And so sometimes you got to put your sales hat on and go make it happen. I mean, are you talking about, a donut shop with razor thin margins? You may not get $50 or $100 a domain, right? Are you talking about a high-powered law firm that cannot afford to not get their invoices through for hundreds of thousands of dollars? They may pay you whatever you ask for.
Yeah. So you could ultimately, and especially with the reporting component of it, if it is so critical, you could charge more for quicker response to, to remediate those things, correct?
Yeah, and we've actually, early on we had, when the mandates went from optional to mandatory. I mean, it was just a free for all. And we had a lot of MSPs calling us back that were like, we'll get to it. We'll let you know. All of a sudden, had their customers saying, hey, our invoice is being rejected. What are you going to do about it? Right. And wanted to get our program as fast as possible to get their customer back up and their emails delivered as fast as possible. So, the one thing you don't want to get is, that call from your customer saying, our email is not going through from some DMARC thing. What are you going to do about it? Why didn't you know about it? We want to avoid those calls, so it's best to get in front of that. But if you have a customer that, a prospect, let's say that's not a customer that calls you out of the blue that's experiencing that, you can certainly take advantage of it.
Is there anything that could go wrong? I mean, I always like to look at things as, what to expect and what could go wrong. Or, when you implement this, are there any things that are a fallout from it?
Yeah, so people ask all the time, like, what happens if a legitimate source gets rejected? Well, if you have it aligned already, DMARC aligned, that's not possible, right? So that's the one thing that they seem to have, that there's a risk in their mind. And this goes back to that strategy you asked about, why we would want to go from a policy of P-none to quarantine, then reject, is because you want to do it in stages to make sure if you happen to miss a source because it's only once a quarter, maybe an email newsletter only comes out once a quarter and you've made all your policy changes the first 2 months, but it doesn't come out to that third month. You want to be sure that you may be on a policy of quarantine so that the email will get through. Right. So there's risk analysis and risk mitigation behind, your policy moves in an orderly fashion to avoid those kind of things. But once this thing is set, it's just set it and monitor it. It's, there's not any big risk of any failures or, all of a sudden, everything changes. Now you might get a source change or you might get a new source added, but with the monitoring process, you'll get notification and be able to take appropriate action.
So, we didn't plan for this, but you are a brilliant person that knows his product, and so I'm putting you in the hot seat here.
Okay.
Not that hot of a seat, So you'll do well with this one. So let's do a quick role play.
Okay.
I am a client, you're an MSP, and you're reaching out to an organization. And let's just pretend you got to the right decision maker. We're not talking about going through gatekeepers. We won't go to that level. But ring, ring, ring. You're calling me, and hi, Mike. How can I help you today?
Yeah, Dan, Mike Anderson of Everything MSP. I'm just going to take just one brief minute to explain why I'm calling. I'm not going to take long. We are what is called a managed service provider, and we have what's called specifically a DMARC services practice. Now, you may not be aware of what DMARC is, and I'm going to cut this very short. DMARC is a protocol to protect your domains, and it also allows your emails to be delivered efficiently. And so we have a capability to scan local businesses in the area, and we just happened to scan your domain as one of many domains. And we came back and we found a risk assessment. And I'd like to send that to you to have you take a look at it. And the only reason I'm reaching out is your risk assessment came back and there's some flashing red lights on it. I want you to take a look, whether you use us or not to help you fix the problem. I thought you should know about it. Let me email it over to you and take a look at it. If you think it's worth a conversation, let's have that discussion.
Well, it seems like I'm getting my emails no problem. I mean, I haven't had anybody, say that, hey, I'm not getting an email, and or vice versa. I mean, I don't know if that we really need that.
Yeah, because somebody that doesn't tell you they're not receiving it. Do they know they're not receiving it? They're just not receiving it. So the fact of the matter is, here's what it all comes down to, Dan. Is DMARC used to be optional with Microsoft, Google, AOL, Yahoo, all of them. Well, they made it mandatory, and they put penalties to non-compliance, which means a diminishing of deliverability, right? And in many cases, outright rejection. So your customers may not even know they're not getting your email. They don't know what they don't know, right? You might take a look at, some of your statistics. And if you don't have the Google analysis, that's something that we can do too, right? You may think your deliverability is here and it's really down here. And with just some simple minor adjustments at a very low cost, you can up your deliverability first. And most importantly, your security, right? Security is job one. If you're not DMARC compliant, which I see from this risk assessment, you're not, right? You really leave yourself open to potential business email fraud, where somebody can impersonate your domain and send your customers invoices, on your behalf, and really try to steal their money. And that's something that should be avoided at all costs.
Well, I was just thinking as you're talking, I have, I know we use Microsoft 365. I mean, I would think they're taking care of all this for us.
Yeah, that's a common fallacy. That's not actually the case. That's like Ford Motor Cars selling you a car through the dealership, and then you thinking, oh, everything's fine with my car. Ford sold me a car. It should work just fine. We all know there's maintenance needed and tuning along the way. And so to use their email service provider networks, they've created a series of security protocols, and you need to check a lot of those protocols. And without a clear picture of what you're doing, you have, most businesses have no idea how far out of alignment and compliance they are.
Okay. I mean, we have, we've got somebody internally here that takes care of all of our technology. Maybe I just need to tell them just to go, wave a magic wand and it'd be fixed.
Yeah, oh boy, only if we had that magic wand to wave, we'd all be rich. It'd be Christmas every single day. And as well as I do, because I drive that car, I'm not a mechanic of that car just because I drive it, right? And so, even mechanics have specialties. So even though you have a generalist, he's probably not a DMARC specialist. Be happy to talk to him, and let's just have a conversation. The worst thing that could come out of the conversation is you're all set, right? I mean, the best thing, you're all set, nothing needed. The worst thing is you're potentially opening yourself to fraud and deliverability issues. And let me ask you something, right? And when your email, has deliverability problems, it's going to lead to several things: general communications being delayed, email marketing, you might as well throw that in the garbage. Can you afford to waste money on email marketing? It's pretty expensive these days.
Sure.
Invoicing, right? Invoicing is also considered a bulk send. What happens? Just think to yourself right now, Dan, what happens when you get slow paid or no paid for the next 30, 60, 90 days because all your invoices are ending up in spam or being deleted without your knowledge?
Mm,
Can you really afford that?
excellent. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you for doing that. Just as we're going through here, I mean, I think sometimes that role playing is great, and I highly recommend that, as you're looking to expand and offer this to organizations you're not currently working with, come up with that script, come up with those standard objections, and do role play internally in your office. Just walk through this process, because the more that you talk through it, the more you master it, the more that you're going to capture their attention. And but start somewhere, right? Just do it. Is there anything else you'd like to share from that perspective, Mike?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're going to get the risk assessment, and you're going to use the typical what I would consider challenger methodology. The business, like you just asked on that question, hey, I'm good. Why do I need to change? And then I present you with this risk assessment, and I move you out of frame, right? The customer's like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. And you go, no problem. I can get you back into frame. Here's what you need to do. And so, practicing those proven techniques of challenger methodology, present them with a risk assessment, move them off center that they don't need to do anything or everything's fine, because you can show them everything is not fine, and get them worried a little bit, and then go, hey, I can get you back on course. Let's have a conversation.
I gotta say, I love that visual of actually doing what you did. I mean, when we say get them in frame, I mean, we're visual people, right? So that's cool. We do have a couple more questions, and again, if you do have any other questions, feel free to throw them in here before we wrap things up. We have a question: what about companies that use QuickBooks, Sage, and others? And these companies send mail for you with your email address as the from address. How does DMARC work with these types?
Now say that again. When they use Sage and they send.
Yeah. So if somebody's using QuickBooks or Sage, and they are emailing on your behalf, so maybe that email is coming from billing at mycompany.com.
Yeah.
So how does DMARC work when you're doing those type of things?
Yeah, you definitely want to have DMARC protection on third-party senders, especially QuickBooks, which is invoicing and doing some other marketing. That's number one. You have to have those sources aligned also, because so many of that is B2C, business to consumer. If you're doing, accounting or billing from your business to the consumer, AOL, Yahoo are strictly enforcing DMARC compliance at the highest rates. And so when they see email coming from your domain and it is not compliant, they are considering it, they are viewing it as a risk right out of the gate and trying to diminish its ability to get to the inbox. So they're either putting it in spam or they're trying to reject it outright. And one thing you want as a business, you don't ever want your invoices to get put in spam or rejected.
Yeah, absolutely. And next question here is it best to deploy the DMARC record and send the reports to your own email? This is a great question. Send it to your own email address, or allow a third-party service to set it up so that these reports are analyzed properly?
Yeah, no, that's as old school as it gets. That's like trying to run a $100 million $100 million business on an Excel spreadsheet. Why would you ever do that? I mean, there's so many commercial tools that are so much far, more advanced. Our platform takes that XML code that they get in the email reports. If anybody's ever seen a DMARC report, it comes in XML code. And like I like to say, unless you're Neo from the Matrix in that first movie where he's looking down that hall at the very end after he is risen again and he turns the code into a picture, unless you're Neo from the Matrix and you can turn code into a picture, those reports are completely worthless. What our platform does is take those reports, ingest it into a usable format where you get visuals, reports, graphics, all kinds of consoles to really all the intelligence that you need to be able to make some good decisions.
And maybe I'm let me just make sure I'm thinking through his question a little bit, because so when you're setting up that record, you have to put an email address in. Is that Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
when you set up the record, right, you're putting a DNS, a little string, a little reporting string into the DNS. That's how you're setting it up. It's not email related. It's domain-based reporting protection. So your domain, is hosted in the DNS, right? And so you're going to go into the DNS settings and you're going to put a little reporting string in there first, and it's going to start ingesting all of that information into our platform. So you're going to have a complete visibility, command, and control of all the facts. Then once you have those reports, right, once you have
Okay.
all that data, then you'll be able to use our platform to segment off, okay, what's compliant and what is non-compliant, and where there's threats, et cetera, and be able to move, in and out of those segments and intelligence to then be able to make decisions of what you need to put into the DNS to make those adjustments.
Gotcha. And so that's where you're talking about, old school, new school.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you weren't using a platform like Easy DMARC, it's going to be just pure chaos.
Yeah, if you set up DMARC, like for example in Office 365, and they tell you to put a setting into the DNS, and what email do you want those reports to go to, your inbox will start filling up with DMARC reports. And when you open up the report, the email, it's just a string of XML code. What are you going to do with that?
Right.
I mean, you've got to be able to translate that into a picture, and our platform does that very easily.
I think the technical term for that is gobbledygook, right?
I'm pretty sure that is the technical term.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up here, what are some final things that you'd like to share with MSPs? And again, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to throw them in here. But just what are some final things that you want to share about DMARC for our audience?
Yeah, number one, don't wait. Right, the market, gold rush to the MSP market with our platform and other platforms. So once providers get DMARC certified and ready to roll out their services, they're going after your customers and business. So my recommendation would not be to wait. Customers are flocking to DMARC as fast as they can. And this is going to be a product with our program that you can easily just dovetail right into your service offering.
Okay. And for our audience that wants to learn more about you guys, they can check out your website, easydmark.com, correct?
Yep, easydmark.com. You can go there for information. We have a specific MSP page that you can go on. You can contact us. You can start a free trial. You can get information. You can reach out to us, schedule a call, whatever you want to do. We're happy to help.
Excellent. And additionally, if you happen to be on our website at everythingmsp.com, you can search for Easy DMARC. We have a great amount of information on there as well. You can send a note directly to Easy DMARC and communicate and contact them. I don't see any additional questions, and that's a sign that, Mike, you did an incredible job of answering all the questions that are out there, which I greatly appreciate. And, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Mike, I want to thank you for your time and knowledge. And everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you all soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.